Hey everyone, Jesse McCarthy here. If you have been curious about options outside of, quote, normal schooling, and especially during these strange times of online classes for literally pre-K children and elementary students, then hang on because today's show on pandemic pods and Montessori microschools is definitely for you. The educator Dr. Maria Montessori once said,
"The child developing harmoniously and the adult improving himself at his side make a very exciting and attractive picture."
Welcome to Montessori Education with me, Jesse McCarthy, where we talk raising children and educating students while bettering ourselves right alongside them. Every so often, I'll get tons of questions and email on the same topic. And I feel, then I have no choice but to do something on it all. And that is how we're here now talking about pods and microschools. And it also doesn't hurt that I personally just love this grassroots trend of parents trying to creatively help their children and really help themselves too during these weird times. As one parent put it about her child's pod teacher, quote, "You are saving our sanity, even our marriages," end of quote. So thankfully, I have someone on today who has real deal experience with pods and microschools, and she will be helping me to make sense of some of the, the practical elements of it all, and maybe even help, some of you out there to open one of these things yourself. Alejandra Tryon, who is a mom of a teenage daughter, has been in education for 18 years, 7 of which have been as a Montessori teacher. And that's actually when I first met her. And it was way back when she began as a guide in a Spanish immersion classroom that I was a part of. You see, Alejandra is originally from Colombia. Y yo hablo un poco de español. You can see how proud I am of that. Anyhow, in addition to Alejandra developing this rare skill of running a successful language immersion classroom, she also just happens to be the first person I know of who began a pod or microschool after COVID hit. And I'm talking real early back in March. So, that's literally over 6 months ago. Now, if you think you got her beat, maybe somebody out there, possibly somewhere in Asia or something, definitely reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Anywho, if you do not know what a pandemic pod or microschool is, it's basically a homeschool with 2 or more families, and it's usually in a room in one of the family's houses, or some small rented building, or sometimes even just in an outdoor environment. And then there, these families, they help educate their own children, whether they themselves head it all or they hire someone else to lead things, like a teacher or a caregiver, or I've seen even just a relative or a creative college student. Now, instead of me going on and on about pods and microschools, I'd rather have you hear straight from the OG herself, Alejandra. So we're going to get right into our conversation. A very quick note, though, that I won't have any closing comments for this episode with, contact info and all that. So if you want to reach me for any reason, just visit montessorieducation.com. And if you're fascinated by what you hear from Alejandra, check out the show notes for a link to her details. All right, let's get going. Alejandra Tryon, nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I thought just jumping in here, let's get a sense of your current situation because I didn't really delve too deep into it. So how many families are you working with? What's the timing of your day? How many kids, that type of thing, ages, so forth.
So I have 3 families, and these make for the children. We have 2 infants, 9 and 10 months, and a toddler that is almost 2 years old, and then a 3.5 and a 4-year-old.
So I should just say, already that has got to be, for a lot of parents and maybe teachers, that has got to be frightening. You are leading this whole thing on your own with that age differences and so forth?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I know, even my own families say, I don't know how you do it, and and the parents are working right there in the house in the second floor, and they are amazed that during the day everything is quiet and nice and calm. So it works really well.
And you said there, so visually here, so you kind of are on like the first floor. Is it a basement or what is it? What's that?
So it is a basement, but it doesn't look like a basement. It's a very it was like let's say like a guest room kind of area.
Okay.
And so I'm in that area with the children, and that space has laundry room, has a bathroom, and has a little connection to an outdoor space, like a little patio.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I am with the children, and the parents are in the same house, but they work in the second floor.
Okay. So you've got one family that actually lives there. You've got 5 different children, infant through, let's say, preschool. That's the setup. And then how often are you doing this with the children?
We do it Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5 p.m.
Wow. So it's like a full-on school day. Like this is a real school.
Yes. We only took Friday as to have a long weekend, kind of. Right. But it's a full day program.
And just that, let's say that Friday that you have off, was that, your decision, the parents' decision together? How did that come about? I mean, it sounds cool. Like it'd be nice to have an extra Friday off as an adult,
Well, as you may imagine, when everything started, it was even before microschools or pod schools were a thing. We started in March when just everything got shut down. So everything started like, oh, do you think you can help with our children for a couple hours? And then it worked really well. So we moved to maybe a longer day, a couple days a week. So initially we only had 3 days a week. And
just you talking, I should say that, you're in San Francisco in like the heart of where there was like a serious shutdown, probably the first or one of the first in America, at least. So I think it's odd for people to start all the way back in March, but I think that was unique to your situation, which I think we'll talk a little bit about because everybody's situation is going to be different. If you're in the middle of San Francisco or say New York City, you might be very different from like where I'm at in the middle of like Podunk, Kansas or something. So everybody might be different, right?
Yes, and for these families, and for all of us in this area, public and private school, it was pretty much like a Thursday. They let us know starting tomorrow, everything is shut. So there is no school starting tomorrow. So I was already working with one of the families as a consultant. And so that's why I started helping them just a little bit. And it worked so well that we decided, okay, let's do it 3 days a week. Yeah. And something that the parents immediately commented about was kind of the peace and sanity that it would give them to be able to do their work and the children have a normal routine. So they asked me, would that be okay to have one more day? So that's how we ended up in the 4-day weekend, on the 4-day week, sorry. And but again, like you would just work it out depending on the needs of your group, your work schedule. So this is what worked for our group, and they like to have that longer weekend to still share with the family, and they get to do their work in 4 days. So that works for us.
Yeah, and one of the things I loved about your story and why I wanted to have you on in particular is just because of how organic the whole thing occurred. Like you've got a family that needed some help. They knew, hey, this is not going to function for us. Like we want our kids in a school. We need to work. We need to make money. Let's got this person I'm working with. You were working with her because of Spanish. Was that it? Or was it something other than that?
No, it was consulting with the child on school. So it wasn't academic or Spanish. It was just some consulting with the family, but just because the child was doing so well. So we didn't want to lose that momentum. So like the whole situation, as you say, was very organic. Like we just had a work going on that we didn't want to lose. And then it worked out. And then the other 2 families joined later.
And I would say I lived in San Francisco for about a half a year. And one of the things that I love about that city, there's all sorts of good and bad in any city you go to. But what I love was just the can-do spirit or like the creativity. So it's not Like if something's going really well, hey, let's get more of it. If something's going poorly, and it doesn't matter who you are, it's just this attitude of like, hey, we can change things.
Yeah.
If school's not going well, we'll change it. If the weather's not going well, all right, we'll build something to help with the weather. Like it's such a cool spirit. So it's not surprising that some of the creativity is coming out of the Bay Area. Although I do know that some people are leaving too. Like I've heard, I don't know how many families, I think you had told me at some point that maybe one of the families is moving or something like that that's currently in the pod. Is that the case?
Yeah, actually, they're moving. And I mean, these are challenges that even you guys, anyone that is opening a pod school, a microschool, may face at some point. And it's because now, parents can work from home, or maybe their work situation changes, so they move close to family or things like that. So yes, one of our families is gonna move on, and then we are gonna be looking for someone that fits the characteristics of our pod.
Okay. Awesome. And maybe we'll get into some of, what makes your pod your pod. I thought maybe for people out there to maybe give like a real concrete, cool experience that maybe one of the parents in the house or one of the other parents that are in this pod, they're just super excited about what's occurred with, your micro school or what you call it. And then maybe something you've enjoyed as well that's occurred. Anything come to mind with that?
I mean, in the beginning, as like the immediate thing they notice, and they would say to me, like, you are just saving our sanity, our marriages, our work space. But more into the children development, something that all families were very mesmerized with was our toddler that was year and a half at a time. We started the potty training process with her, and she was very successful. So to have someone so young in these characteristics, like having going through this training, is really mesmerizing for them.
And you said a year and 5 months?
A year and 6 months. So
year and 6 months. Sorry, year and a half. Okay, so I know for people that are listening, that maybe normal parents, that might sound nuts. So is that, I know in Montessori, we in my early days started an infant program and kind of built up that. And we saw infants being trained at this young, or quote, trained or potty. What do you call it yourself, Alejandra? I know that people are like, I don't call it training. What do you call it? I'm curious.
We call it bathroom independent. In Montessori, it's everything about the independency. So they become bathroom independent. So yes, and more because the other, like both 2 out of the 3 families have older children who are 3 and 4, and they are like, well, my child at 1.5 was nowhere close to started using underwear and things like that. But yeah, it is a very good age, and with the right environment and the right routine, it is doable. And of course, it doesn't mean, and just for everybody, like I feel we have this concept of bathroom independency as fully underwear, no wet spills, nothing, but it's not at all. It's just having all the awareness and starting working in the process. And now she's almost 2, and she is very successful.
That's great. That's fantastic. And I got to say, like, you're talking about the older children there, the fact that there's mixed ages. And I know in, great real school environments with infants, there's a range, and you can see some of the children, you can see, oh yeah, look at they're potty trained. I mean, an infant's not saying that explicitly, but they see it. But what's interesting, I didn't think about it before, but as you're talking about these different groups, like the 3 or 4-year-olds, like your setup in a school setting, like an actual school setting, would be illegal in almost every state that I know.
Yeah.
So I just, I'm throwing that out there because there's I'm just thinking about this with pandemic pods or these micro schools. I actually think some of them, if done right, which it sounds like you're killing it in there, is that they're actually better in some respects than some schools can be, because you don't have, at least right now, you don't have to follow some of the kind of arcane laws that, separate children by age, or like, a 5-year-old can't have a little butter knife because he might cut himself or something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you just have a little bit more freedom.
Yeah, just like when you have a nanny at home, like you use your environment and your children are the age they are, So this is exactly a home environment that, yes, these families have children these ages. So we need to work out the environment to meet their needs.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, and I agree. And I don't want to throw it out there like, oh, these are some unsafe environments or something. I mean, it more like when you have somebody who knows what they're doing, the idea of then you need somebody else to come in and tell you, oh, yes, you are being safe. It's like, you know what? We got it under control. We can handle it. I mean, you've got grown parents who have made a decision to trust you with their children.
Yeah.
And you have experience, which I talked about, earlier. You have a tremendous amount of experience. So, but anyways, I just find it really cool, the mixing, and it's so abnormal to have infants all the way up to preschool. So it's
yeah,
cool.
For sure it's different.
All right. So, given that you've done this, what do you say? Because I'm getting a lot of listeners and so forth, but somebody who approaches you and kind of is like, there's no Montessori school near me and that's available for whatever reason, whether it's for COVID or they live far away from a great Montessori school, whatever. How can I open a Montessori like micro school in my home, or maybe connect with some parents to do it, whether it's in a church, whatever? Like, what would be your, like, if you could just do quick 3, say, top suggestions, like, what would you do? What would you give the guidance?
Yeah, and I mean, 1 to 3 is hard to do, but yeah, I think I have. So the first thing to me would be to find, if you are gonna do it with other families, and make sure that the vision and how the other parents want to deal with the current situation is the same. Because, that is very important. If for you, the safety part is very important, and you want to have certain protocols for everybody's safety, and like, of course, the other families need to align with that vision with you.
Mm-hmm.
Same way, even with the method, if everybody, if you want Montessori, of course you want the family that join your pod to also want the same method. Mm-hmm. So whether like whatever your situation is, find the families that are on the same page as you are. Establish the space where you wanna. The second one would be to establish the space where you wanna work. And I know I'm very spoiled, and I have a perfect space, and that not everybody's gonna have this completely separate perfect space. Mm-hmm. But it is doable. Sometimes you can do your living room, and you are gonna need a lot more of preparation if you're gonna be working on your office and you don't want to disturb or distract your child. Then you're gonna have to have some prep and have your meals with you, and only come out during nap time. But that is something that you should work out and be prepared for. And the third one would be to, of course, find a person that can help you run the program. And it doesn't always work out to find a trained teacher that is available. Like, let's be real. Right? But maybe you have an awesome nanny that you love. Maybe you are a stay-home parent and you would love to do it. And so choose that person that is going to be running the program. And if that person doesn't have all the tools, also take in account that you are going to find that support that maybe help the start in the process and the guidance that maybe this person is gonna need on the daily basis. And I think.
Oh, go for it. Sorry, I'll cut you off.
And I think that, of course, there are so many little details around that, but like those 3 would be the beginning of having what you need.
Okay, so we've got find, whatever amount of families you feel comfortable with, and ensure that you guys are aligned. So there's not, like bickering over oh, there
Hmm.
shouldn't be sweets in the house or something. Like you got to have some standards with the family, right?
Exactly.
Then you've got just get a space that's going to work. It doesn't have to be a mansion or something like that, but whatever
Uh-huh.
space it is. That actually reminds me, number two. I didn't think about this before, but my grandfather actually had a little like a little homeschool within his home where my uncle would had a classroom there. It was like 4 or 5 kids in there. I think they ranged. It was my cousin and a friend of his, but they did it, and it was just a little bedroom. So I
Yeah.
think as you're saying, like it doesn't need to be some fantastic thing. So that's two,
No.
and then third is to find an adult who will be able to manage the program or manage whatever you guys have going.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm number three is interesting because you had said you might not find a teacher. And I have found, and if there are any kind of schools out there listening, Montessori, heads of schools or administrators or even teachers, that I have found that schools that for whatever reason haven't been able to open, or for the horrible ones that had to unfortunately close because of everything that's gone on with COVID, I have seen people really pivot and adapt and hire out
Hmm.
teachers. Again, if the school is not working full time or there's not enough work for the teachers, where they hired out those teachers to do exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, a teacher's just like, listen, I just feel super uncomfortable going inside a classroom with 25 kids, whatever your particular situation is. So they've looked for families like this. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for teachers, assistants, all school owners that are stressed right now because they can't afford to keep going, that type of thing. So
Yeah,
just a
and
note.
even just something that I've heard about recently. Some schools are even offering the option to have children in the school or to have pods,
Yeah.
because of what you said. Like, there is not just that the schools are not opening. Some parents are not ready to send
Yep.
their children, and we all have the right to give our children the experience that make us like that we have peace with. So it's not wrong one way or the other, but even the schools are opening those other options for families that don't want to come back to school yet.
Yep. And I'm happy you said that too, because I'm getting all sorts of emails from people that want my opinion or take, or teachers, parents. I'm like, should I send my child back to school as a teacher? Should I go back into the classroom? And it's really interesting because my first question is always like, what is your context, your individual, as you were basically saying, it's what's going on with your life, with your kids, with your, as a teacher. Because there's no way I can give guidance for people that are in such different places, have such different
Hmm.
health situations. Do you have elderly people in your home? What's your just everything? There's so many factors. So I like that you're saying, this is really individualized to who the parents are, who the teacher is, and so I appreciate you raising that. I wasn't, thinking about throwing that out there, but I think it's an important point. So thank you.
Yeah.
And, on this just note about maybe individualizing, since this is the Montessori education podcast, this is kind of generalized a lot of that context, but how about, like, I'm getting listener questions. I had one from, let me just pull something up real quick. All right. So like Marianne, like this is what she said. I wanted to reach out and see if you knew of a Montessori program I can go through with my son online or print, like if she went and printed stuff out and worked it. I work full time, so I was hoping to find something all in one or something easy I could follow. He just turned 3. So that's one. I'll just give you the other one real quick. So this is from Brooke. We will be homeschooling this year. I have a 3-year-old and one going to 2nd grade. Do you have any suggestions for Montessori curriculum for homeschool families? So that was Brooke. And I've gotten numerous of these. So what do you think about, let's just go with online materials, online printing, online curriculum that, let's say somebody that doesn't have the experience that you have can kind of just start to, adapt themselves. They might not be able, as you said, they might not be able to get that teacher. How can a parent do it? Or if, let's say, they hire like, a 19-year-old, somebody just out of high school or somebody to help them, how can they work with that person or work with themselves to be more, quote, Montessori at home, like online and so forth?
And I mean, this is, of course, challenging because we are all like, we wouldn't ever thought of this virtual or just getting a curriculum online
Yeah.
before these times, and I know there are some public schools in some places, or some Montessori schools that are offering curriculum, or even your school that you used to be with maybe even if you want to send Montessori, any school that you were part of would be able to offer you some curriculum. um, I really feel, because sometimes, like, if I give, as you said, if I hire this 19-year-old to help me with this process and I send her online, it can be a little bit overwhelming too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, there are some curriculums that you can go and get. I know there are some online 1 week, 2 week training to give you some general basis, but I feel it is very important to try to find, you don't have to find a trained person that can give you, then, like, can run completely your program.
Hmm.
But I feel if you have non-experience and you wanna have a successful program, it's worth it to try to find someone that I can at least help you for a couple hours with your specific situation,
Yeah.
create your routine, give you the general basis, and also like give you a guidance on what materials you can start with. Because I'm sure you can find all the list of Montessori materials, but it's like, whoa, like, for example, in the primary classroom, we have materials for ages 3 to 6.
Hmm.
And there's so many of them, and you can find online some packages that they know they cannot be the right ones for your class. They can be
Hmm.
super expensive, and you don't know how long, how short you are going to be in this setting. So for your specific situation, I think it is worth it to find someone that can give you a little personal guidance, and then that person maybe can help you find the kind of curriculum or give you even that guidance for your specific situation.
Okay, so I mean, it sounds like, and I think this is right. And with me, this often happens where I can give a little bit of guidance for like an hour or an hour and a half to
Mm-hmm.
somebody and really like get them on the right path. But the reality is, they need to be the type of person who's open to adapting and messing up, getting back up, but at least to get some initial guidance from somebody who actually knows what they're doing with this.
Yeah, because I mean, as unique as my situation is,
Hmm.
every single one is unique. And some,
Yeah.
like, you can have a pod that is just for kindergarteners and one that is just infants. So, like,
Mhm.
to send someone to just resources, I
Yeah.
mean, and these days we are already very overwhelmed, and we have
Yes.
already so much on our plate. If we
Yeah.
have to spend so much time online just trying to figure out, and even if the person that I meet for that 1 hour is able to send me to the specific site, the specific resources that I need,
Hmm.
that save me hours of stress.
Yeah. And just listening to what you're saying, I mean, the best Montessorians that I've seen on every level, there's an organic and natural element of them, particularly when they're talking about what you to do at home, even if say it's a
Hmm.
micro school. Is that I don't know about Alejandro when you started, because we worked together so many years ago, opening that first
Yeah.
Spanish class,
Yeah.
but I don't know if you remember at that time. I don't know if it was already had reached it, but a lot of the initial teachers in our toddler classrooms had no Montessori training, and what I found was that ultimately you're going to want to get that training if you're going to be a full-time teacher. That's my experience.
Yeah.
But with the best assistants and the best teachers, there's a certain quality of just being comfortable with children and being okay with adapting and getting our hands dirty, that type of thing that I found. So, you're saying that, like, if you want to get some expertise, like say you have a 4-year-old that really needs to start reading, you might reach out to a Montessori trainer or a Montessori guide or some consultant to get that. But then during the normal course of a day, I have to imagine, Alejandra, like you guys are doing like real world activities that
Yeah.
are about, like, you're at home. Like you can do things that are really practical that otherwise children wouldn't be doing. That's really helpful for their development in the real world. I mean, is that the case with you, or am I just
Absolutely.
throwing? Okay.
Yeah, and of course, like, if you think this is an immediate need, and we go for a full year or 3 full summers to be able to get our training, so that is really impossible that I can just drop all the knowledge to have the full Montessori curriculum
Hmm.
to someone. But as you said, it's not about just having a perfect Montessori classroom curriculum and materials. It's a Montessori approach at home as well, and that is completely doable. And there are a lot of activities that you can do with what you have at home. Spooning, pouring from one jar to the other one, prepping food, and it sounds very simple, but if you have the right steps, the right setting for the materials, you can really help children develop concentration, follow following steps until
Mhm.
they finish a process. All that mathematical thinking that, like what is to solve mathematical problems, to
Mhm.
follow steps until you find the answer and you complete the process. So all that part and fine motor skills, um,
Yeah.
are able to develop. And yes, even if we don't have the materials that we would use at home, we can use and make materials even for more advanced ages that are ready to learn the sound of the letters or to start working with some addition, subtraction. But that's why it is important to also know what resources the the pod has
Yeah.
to
Yep.
to be able to guide them, because not everybody has the same setting, the same ages, the same resources, even the same level where children are
Yeah. And I think
in their
you
schooling.
and you're saying this just about the learning that takes place and kind of normal stuff at home.
Mhm. Mhm.
It just because when a normal parent or a normal teacher that's kind of outside of Montessori or just getting into it, you might think of like even cooking. It sounds like, oh yeah, well yeah, we could cook, but that's gonna take a half an hour, then we're done. What else do we do? Like how are they gonna learn? And you forget that at that young age, like a whole cooking process, the prep, the cutting, the finish, the eat, it could take hours, if not days.
And I mean, I'm glad you mentioned this because I get a lot. I do consultation with parents, and parents that are setting their environments, like maybe they are in virtual schooling, but just for, let's say, 30 to 90 minutes a day. But there is a full day that, what do I do with my child?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they're like, okay, work full day. And if I have to think of projects to keep my child busy during the day, like I have no time for that.
Hmm.
Something very important that I always tell them is children need repetition. You don't need new activities every day. If you nailed the right activities to offer that aim their interest, you can have the same activities for weeks, for months,
Yeah.
and they get to perfection and they get to use them every day. You don't need to plan different things for every day.
Yeah,
And
there
that is a
seem
beauty when you are so busy.
Yeah, and there seems to be like this feeling like, oh my gosh, I got to cover all these different subjects and so forth. And just stepping back and really thinking about, man, if a child can focus and really like
Mm-hmm.
perfect or like get good and efficient at some skill, the self-esteem it builds, the kind of just the competence in doing
Yeah.
things for oneself is so huge, like the self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's wild because I've been talking to a few buddies, and recently, these are dads, and they've been raising that there's something about this pandemic that's kind of got them doing more kind of things around the house, like fixing light fixtures. I was talking
Yeah.
with my brother he lives in Virginia, and every now and again you'll see an Amish family, kind of riding by with the horse and carriage. It's kind of crazy. But and he had noted that, aside from, what I don't want to get into religion and so forth, but the kind of just taking care of oneself, like making
Mm-hmm.
butter, making one's clothes, there's something about that gives a sense of fulfillment. And, I think people, when they think of quote schooling or micro schools or even education, there's such a focus on it's a pencil and a paper,
Yeah.
and you forget that like education is about, like real development, self-development is about life. It's not just about a math sheet, like I have to imagine a lot of these people living on the Amish, these farms or areas or even farm children, they know a lot better math, like real math, than
Yeah.
some of these children that are just cramming their heads with mimicking numbers. Like they know math better. Do you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, and not Montessori. I mean, Montessori is, as you know, Alejandra, I mean, it's so practical and hands-on. So your kids really learn the math and they apply it. But it's almost like now you have a cool situation, or if you're going to make a pod at home, where you can do even more application with things around the house, you know? So, I mean, it just seems like a lot of opportunity where we don't have to think only in terms of materials or online stuff, as you were saying, right?
Yeah, yeah. And more because like some children already have some maybe online opportunities with their school, but what happened with the rest of the day? They
Yep.
still need a routine.
Yeah, no, and I like you saying that because your quote pod might be only a couple hours a day with a couple families because you've got that online portion with your school already. So, yeah, that's awesome. So now this kind of sounds all fantastic and lovely, and I can see parents getting like, "Wow, this is going to be great," and then the next day it's like, "Oh my God, what did I get myself into?" You know?
Yeah.
So what are maybe some pitfalls or things to look out for since you've already done it and you've become successful at it, and these families have become successful at it? Like, what are some pitfalls to look out for those that are just starting or relatively new, or that type of thing?
I feel a big thing is transparency, because you guys really need to put on the table your cards, and this is what I'm looking for, and this is not going to work if you, for example, like if you are really into still being isolated and not exposure and things like that, but maybe someone that um, wanna join your pod is still cool meeting their families during the weekend because they consider their family a safe pod still. But if for you that is not, like, I'm not saying one is right, one is wrong. I'm just saying if you two have such different perspective of the situation, or you have such different expectations, that's not going to work. For example, and even down to like the contribution from the families, who is going to host, what is going to be expected from the other families, who is going to buy the materials, or who's going to make the materials, like transparency on every single step of the process is huge, because this is, you become really close to these people that you run this pod with. And this happened also when you are a teacher, but like for right now, I spend more time with these families and these children than with my own family. So it's really a close relationship. So you have to be able to be transparent, to tell to each other what's working, what is not working, without that being an issue, because there is so much to improve on the way. Like, yes, I may tell you how things are going right now. Like, we have, I don't know, 6 months we have been doing this, but of course you need to figure things out on the way. So you have to be with a team that you are okay going through this process, figuring things out. Because as you said, there are going to be advantages, disadvantages, challenges, and you are with these people going through this.
I think of Montessori because one of the biggest things for me in Montessori is not just the independence of the child, but the community that's being built. And I know with great Montessori schools, you build this sense of like, even the adults, I want to be here. I'm just such a benevolent and positive feel. I can only imagine what you're saying, because it's almost like you guys are all at the dinner table together. Like, this is as you said, it's like another family. So
yeah, and this is, one of the things that is huge for families is that these allow real social interaction for their children. And I know that is a big thing why families are having issues with the online model, is because they miss that social part. And in the pod schools, you can have that social interaction. And for example, our pod is very strict about the safety protocols, so we have regular interactions. We don't wear a mask because we all are a pod. So to have that freedom, liberty to have real interaction and social interaction within the families, within the children, that is something that they really love.
Yeah, and then I think, as you said earlier, if you live in an area or you live in a neighborhood or you have some people in your home, maybe some elderly people or whatever your views are that your children need to wear masks together, that's going to be your thing. So I think the message here is that whatever your thing is, make it that you all are on the same page so that you don't end up having these battles or something between family. What is it, Family Feud or something like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I mean, this has been great, Alejandra. I hope everybody out there has gained something. Is there anything else, just jumping out? I think we've covered a bunch, but is there anything else that's on your mind that you want to get out there before we hop off?
I mean, just if you really want to start something like this, know that it's a beautiful opportunity, but that also they have challenges. Like maybe you are listening to me and you are saying, oh yes, but you have the full basement. We don't have that. Like, forget about it. I know not every situation is perfect, but that is a beauty that you can work with the space you have, with the resources you have, and make it work for your group. And also, something that is very important is just like any school, any method, any theory, these may not be a solution for everybody. So I'm not trying to say like everybody should go to microschools. Like, I mean, there are tons of different schools and methods, and we all always choose the one that align with our perspective, our home, and the vision and expectations we have for our children. So this is kind of the same. It's not perfect for everybody. It is not a perfect recipe, but it's a great opportunity if that is what you are looking for.
Yeah.
And it is doable with the resources you have of either teachers, nannies, a parent that want to run it, with the resources of materials you have, with the resources of space you have. You just have to plan it around what you count with.
Yeah, and even you're saying this, I think is a brilliant ending, because it just goes back to Montessori and at adapting. And I just think, I know I'm going to get people. I was like, well, do you think micro school is better than going to a full school? And do you think I should go, get this incredibly wealthy family, or just go with this, more normal income? And I'm just like, you've got to do what's right for you. And I think I like that you're really emphasizing that it's what's good for you. I mean, even homeschooling, I'm not normally gung-ho on homeschooling if you're the parent of only your children, because you're with them so often. But if it ends up working for your family, just you and your one child or two children, if that's what you got to do, you got to do it, like adapt and make it happen. And even like, you're saying about the basements, you have this gorgeous environment where you can go outside and so forth. I got to tell you, I worked for some schools, and every now and again, one of the schools in our big kind of group, it was like the most beautiful one, but it had a feeling, and it was the most expensive one. I think it was like over $2,000 a month, or even $25. But it had a sterile feeling to it. This one school, because it was too much like a I don't know how I would put it, but I am telling you, I would rather put my child in another school that I once saw that was like $700 a month or something like that. Because they just had like you. There's a spirited teacher. It didn't have all the newest materials, but it just had a certain community and feel to it. So I like that you were saying it's about your needs and adapt, because this really, I think this trend to micro schools or pods or so forth, it's for anyone who has the creativity and says, I'm going to do this. Say you lost your job and you're at home, start a pod, man. Like it's just, there's something beautiful about it, for me at least. I mean, that's my
yeah. And there is something, like, now that you mentioned this, there is something that I've been realizing for many years, and as a consultant, I've always deal with this with my families, and it is a lot of like outside pressure for parents, expectations. You should be this way, your child should never be alone. As a parent, you should know how to deal with this misbehavior. Like, there is so much expectations, and parents are also learning how to be parents. And also the same goes to the way you believe or the approach you want to take with your children. There is always going to be a lot of criticism if your environment is different. So for example, I have this beautiful family that decided we are not ready to send our children to school. We don't feel safe, but everybody in their community are sending their children to school and really giving them a hard time. And so, and this can happen in the opposite way, you know, or anyway, like you may have some social pressure for what everybody's doing and you should be doing. But so that's why I really feel, as a parent, as a family, it is your child, it is whatever you want to give your child, and
Yeah.
whatever is right for you, no matter what everybody else is doing, because you are the one who is gonna feel peace if you do what you feel is the correct thing for your child.
Yeah.
And it cannot be, it may be the opposite to what other families doing, but it is what you have decided, and we have the right to choose what to do with our children education.
Yeah. No, I love that. And you're basically saying don't let other people should on you. I've heard it put like that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on again, Alejandra. And I will ensure that people have your link if they want to get a hold of you. But why don't you just say it just in case I somehow don't get it on there?
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And my site is www.immersemontessori.com. And yes, immersemontessori.com. Just
All right.
go check and let me know if I can help with anything.
Yeah, and I will definitely put on a link. I know I'm saying if I do it, but I will get it on there. I'll make sure.
Yes,
So.
and there you are gonna find my latest blog is the little story of my microschool, so you will be able to read more details there.
All right. Well, thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Thank you for having me.
Yep.
Bye.
Adios.